We're live? Yep. Okay. And we are live. So today, I'm going to be doing a little bit of research, and I just decided to do it live, share it with everybody. Anybody who wants to hop in. Season season 2 of Oonga Boonga and his 500 pogs. You mean pigs? Pogs would be cool. Papua New Guinean people trading in 80s, 90s era toys as their currency. That would be an interesting documentary. Yeah, so no, unfortunately, for those of you who were there, you might not know because it was taken down, but I got a copyright warning for reacting what I normally do with video content. And unfortunately, I got a warning for watching this documentary from the 1970s, which I thought was very odd, but that's okay. Today, that's not going to happen because we're doing just articles. We're going to be going over some journal articles. Might get into like journal articles from like archaeological journals, and we might get into some news articles. They tend to put the information. Sometimes the information is not entirely accurate or technical in the way that I want it, but sometimes you can't get to the actual journal. Sometimes they're open access. I would say that archaeology and anthropology are usually better at having their information open, as in not behind a paywall. But you can't blame the archaeologists and the anthropologists for this because it's the journals that do it. So some of the articles that I want to see are available, some of them are not. Yeah, welcome Big Yehuda. For anybody who doesn't know, he's working with me now. Archaeological Raccoon, welcome back. Love your name. Love the little trash panda there. Welcome back, Minoan and Craig. Craig, longtime supporter, 8-time grandfather. So thanks a lot for being here, guys. So we're going to start with the Kelp Highway hypothesis from John M. Erlandson. And I had looked up Erlandson before, but I'm going to pull up his Wikipedia. Oops, not like that. So John Erlandson is an archaeologist. He is I believe, a maritime archaeologist. Sometimes whether you're a maritime archaeologist or what kind of archaeologist you are or what specific type of academic you are depends on what you did your PhD research in or what job you have. So it's not as clear cut as people make it out to. But yeah, so Erlandson's research interests include coastal adaptations, the peopling of North America, maritime archaeology, and historical ecology. Ecology being the interaction. Wait, what is ecology? I used to want to be, so a little bit about me, a branch of biology that deals with the relations of organisms to one another and to their physical surroundings. Yeah, so I used to want to be a ecologist. I used to want to be an environmental scientist, environmental engineer. I spent 3 weeks as an environmental engineering student and hated it. That was after I got out of the Marine Corps, where I was my secondary MOS, my secondary job, which became like so my secondary MOS being like the job that you're qualified to do. It was a short school and on like short, like 2-3 days, I think. Or no, it was like a week. It was like a 2-day course for the first thing, and then I think it was like 5 days afterwards. What's up, Smeagol? How you doing, brother? Thanks for joining again. We got a great topic today. I'm really excited. This is the first time I'm going over like research as a stream. So let me know if you guys like this. I would love to do more stuff like this. I also want to try doing just some general streams, maybe offering like reactions and topics for donations. Oh, and somebody's already dropping some seafaring in the Pleistocene. Yeah, so there's actually a lot of research on this, and we're going to get into it in just a moment. I'm just letting people cycle in. But my secondary job was as a hazardous materials site manager. So I actually worked in that job with some environmental scientists, some civilian environmental scientists, as well as some what's it called? Gosh, it's literally what I used to do. Compliance people, some compliance people. Oh, Cam. Oh, right. I forgot Cam. Yeah, the archaeological raccoon is Cam. I remember that I'd seen you before, but I forgot that it was Cam. So yeah, so today we're going to be talking about seafaring in the Pleistocene. And the reason being, and if you've been on Twitter with me, there's been the whole thing. D. Dunking put out another video attacking some of Flint's points. I agreed with a lot of what he said. There's a lot of gray area in this, so I decided to do more research. And while the conversation, the 4.5 hour podcast episode, was unfortunately very disappointing in that they did not discuss as much of the content as I wanted them to. Flint did, and if you watch my 3 streams on it, we watched the whole thing, reacted to it. Flint did talk about some very interesting things that I was really interested in. I praised Flint. I will never do that on Twitter, most likely, but I did in video praise Flint because it's about the content. It's not about these interpersonal issues. I wish we could get back to the content, and that's what we're doing today. But Flint did bring up some really cool stuff in archaeology that I loved, but mostly it wasn't centered on the content. So we're getting back to the content. I had something else to say, but it doesn't matter. We're going to come back. We're getting in. We got enough people in here that I can start. So what we're going to be talking about is the Kelp Highway hypothesis. So obviously the land bridge theory, which is connected to Clovis first, which is the idea that the culture called Clovis, which was named, we don't know what they called themselves. We have very little actual, we don't have written records from Clovis, but we have, there's a few material culture remains that are associated with Clovis that are found throughout a large area of, I think, just North America. Don't quote me on that, but so the Clovis first was the hypothesis for the peopling of the Americas about 12,000 years ago, which for a long time was thought to be was thought to be the truth. It was the prevailing theory for the peopling of Americas. This date of 12,000 years was very true. So Flint, in that episode, he did correctly state that in archaeology, I don't know when exactly it completely changed over, but it's been an acceptable theory in archaeology since about the 90s to early 2000s. When I was a kid in class from secondary school, middle school, or high school, I was still learning about Clovis first, which I thought was, when I learned in college, once I started taking archaeology classes, that archaeologists don't really believe in Clovis first, and they didn't for a long time. I think Flint said that in the 90s, he learned that Clovis first was not real. So, sometimes it takes a lag for the actual academics. So some of the education people are actual academics. If you're a longtime listener, you know how I feel about education, post-secondary degrees. A doctorate degree in education is not a PhD. Sometimes we talk about how PhDs are BS, but an EdD is really BS. So the idea that Clovis first is not real requires us to reformulate other hypotheses about the peopling of Americas, because we know that there were people in the Americas pre 12,000 years ago. We're not going to be going into the specifics of that today, but there's a bunch of articles. There is ample evidence for that at this time that has been found, and there's more being found all the time. But that requires us to understand how people actually got into the Americas in the first place. So this is one of the leading theories, and it's called the Kelp Highway hypothesis, marine ecology, the coastal migration theory, and the peopling of America. So I'm going to read the entire abstract here just to get, if you don't know, which you probably do if you're watching this extraordinarily academic channel. Extraordinarily academic for a guy that only has bachelor's degrees, 3 bachelor's degrees, magna cum laude. So we're going to read the abstract so we understand. In this article, a collaborative effort between archaeologists and marine ecologists, you love to see it, we discuss the role kelp forest ecosystems may have played in facilitating the movement of maritime peoples from Asia to the Americas near the end of the Pleistocene. Growing in cool near-shore waters along rocky coastlines, kelp forests offer some of the most productive habitats on Earth, with high primary productivity, I don't know what that means, magnified secondary productivity, I don't know what that means, and 3-dimensional habitat, I know what that means, supporting a diverse array of marine organisms. Today, extensive kelp forests are found around the North Pacific from Japan to Baja California. After a break in the tropics, where nearshore mangrove forests and coral reefs are highly productive, kelp forests are also found along the Andean coast of South America. These Pacific Rim kelp forests support or shelter a wealth of shellfish, fish, marine mammals, seabirds, and seaweeds, resources heavily used historically by coastal peoples. By about 16,000 years ago, the North Pacific coast offered a linear migration route, essentially unobstructed and entirely at sea level, from Northeast Asia into the Americas. Recent reconstructions suggest that rising sea level early in the post-glacial period created a highly convoluted and island-rich coast along Beringia's southern shore, conditions highly favorable to maritime hunter-gatherers. Along with the terrestrial resources available in adjacent landscapes, kelp forests and other nearshore habitats sheltered similar suites of food resources that required minimal adaptive adjustments for migrating coastal peoples. With reduced wave energy, hold fast for boats, and productive fishing, hold fast for boats, this is key, and productive fishing, these linear kelp forest ecosystems may have provided a kind of kelp highway for early maritime peoples colonizing the New World. Okay. So this article is the first one about this. There are more written about the kelp highway hypothesis. I got more stuff here. So Dibble was full of shit. They were still teaching Clovis first well up until 2010. Granted, the people teaching it were a minority by that point. Yeah. So I think what Flint said in that is that he was taught in undergrad that Clovis first was BS. There's no way to fact check that, so I'll take his word for it. But yeah, these people worked on this, okay? John M. Erlandson. This is in combination the Museum of Natural and Cultural History at the University of Oregon, the Moss Landing Marine Laboratories, Department of Anthropology at Bates College, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service from Anchorage, Alaska, the U.S. Geological Survey, like all of these big institutions, right? So this is not some crockpot theory, okay? This isn't coming out of nowhere. The Journal of Island and Coastal Archaeology. And if I'm remembering correctly, another one of Erlandson's was published in Nature, which is one of the foremost, most respected scientific journals in the world. That Nature and Science and the New England Journal of Medicine, which is not relevant to us here, being like probably the most prestigious journals. So this stuff is interesting on its own, but it also is, it's very important to Flint Dibble's argument because number one, Graham Hancock never talked about boats. Like, it's very up in the air what this hypothesized lost civilization would have used for transportation. But regardless, Flint chose to use the lack of boats from 12,000 years ago in the archaeological record to prove that, or to disprove the idea that there was a lost civilization that went out. Yeah, somebody just comments Flint Dribble. Yep, Flint Dribble, Flint Fibble, whatever you want to call him. So if the point here is that all of this other, and he claimed that ships could survive in an environment for tens of thousands of years. He even used 30,000, or I think Joe asked him, could it be 30,000 years? And Flint said, oh yeah. And I don't know if that's true. I do have some experience in maritime archaeology. There is, but in an anaerobic environment and with cold, stable water, yeah, I think ships could survive for a very long time. You also find this on land in anaerobic environments like bogs, where famously a bogman who is thousands of years old was found in the UK somewhere. And he was preserved so extraordinarily well that when some hikers came across this guy's body, they actually called the police because they thought it was a murder. And after they looked at it, they were like, no, this is like a ancient person. This is not a murder. But because that anaerobic environment preserves so well, they were able to find it. So you're more likely to find this type of thing in an anaerobic environment. You're more likely to find preserved archaeological finds in anaerobic environments. They're much better for preservation. But not all underwater environments are good for preservation. Some of them do deteriorate over time, and often they become habitats for plants, for animals, for kelp, things like that. So I might move on for this, but brain. No, I want to search the word boat. Okay. So we're going to find in here the references for boats. Why is it going 3 to 5? Okay. That's from the abstract. Where is it? Here we go. Okay, so this is what I wanted to show. So there was earlier research for this. Fluted Clovis-like points have now been found from coast to coast in North America, for instance, and terminal Pleistocene sites have been identified in several areas along the Pacific coast of North and South America. So that's just referencing Pleistocene, Ice Age, basically the same thing, I think. Someone correct me on that if that's not true. These include shell middens or human skeletal remains found on islands in Alta and Baja California, sites that demonstrate that coastal Paleo Indians had seaworthy boats and other maritime capabilities between 13,000 and 11,000 cal BP. I don't know, calories. That means something else, but I think it's years before present. BP, you'll often see this in anthropology articles, BP, before present. So this is key here, okay? This is in a peer-reviewed anthropological journal that is saying that 13,000, 11,500 years ago, they had boats, and yet none of these boats have ever been found. And in fact, the oldest boat or ship that's ever been found is from 4,700 years ago. Flint says on the podcast that there's one from 7,000 years ago, but that one's a canoe. He calls it a shipwreck, but it's a canoe. You know, maybe you think we're splitting hairs, but when we're having a technical conversation, it's not a ship, it's not a wreck, and it wasn't at sea. It was found in a lake, and a lake is going to be more stable water. It was found in Lake Bracciano in Italy, so it's more likely to preserve there. And it wasn't a wreck. I mean, it could have been a wreck in the sense that it sunk for some reason, but there is evidence. This is actually something I know a lot about. I've actually made my own dugout canoe. At least the Eastern Algonquins, that I know a lot about in general, and especially about their boat building capabilities, they would sink their boats in the winter in the water to keep them wet and not frozen. They would drop rocks in them and put them in the bottom so they would be under the ice layer, and then pull them back up in the spring. Okay, so you're more likely to, it probably wasn't a wreck. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a wreck. It wasn't in the sea. So what we're talking about here is that this article is claiming 13,000 to 11,500 years ago. Okay, I'm just going to read some comments before I go on to the next thing. The environment would have to be extraordinarily stable to survive 30,000 years, almost impossible. Yeah, it would. It would be a very specific type of environment. And I just don't think Flint knows that much about maritime archaeology. I hope you did start a trend, because I've been saying Flint Dribble everywhere. There's also Flint Fibble, all these other ones. Bogs don't last that long. We were probably talking about following coastlines, whale or seal hunting, and using skin basket type boats that keep within close to shore. So yeah, so the style of the canoe, or I'm sorry, the kayak that we generally use today, skin boats refers to, it's usually animal skins around a wooden frame. And these type of boats can still be found today in the Aleutian. That's like the little peninsula tailing Alaska. They still use these types of boats today, and they did for a very, very long time traditionally. And these boats are really cool, and it probably was something like that. That they're not going to be using dugout canoes that far north. In northern New England, they also use skin boats. I don't know much about them because most of my research has been into dugout canoes. But these skin boats also existed. Okay, so we're going to go into some of these other articles, but I want to read this next part here. But remember that 13,000 to 11,500 years ago, demonstrating that these archaeologists have no problem with claiming that there are that there was a people that had boats in the past, and yet we don't have access to those boats. We don't have any examples of those boats, but they're still comfortable with sharing that because they find the evidence convincing. Okay, so evidence for even earlier maritime voyage by anatomically modern humans has emerged from islands of the Western Pacific Rim, including the colonization of Australia roughly 50,000 years ago. An additional ocean voyaging to the islands of Western Melanesia and the Ryukyu Archipelago and Japan between 40,000 and 30,000 years ago by the last glacial maximum. And it's one thing that I didn't know in the preliminary research that I did for this is that these places, I had thought that Australia during the lowest levels of sea level was I think it's called Sundaland, which was like the Malay Peninsula and the Indonesian islands used to be a landmass. And I had thought that there was a direct land bridge. Apparently, this isn't true, which is very interesting. That means that they would have had to have had sea travel. Yeah. So while the feasibility of a coastal migration route into the New World has grown, recent geological and archaeological evidence has clouded the potential of an interior route to account for the earliest human colonization of the Americas. So I'm going to find more references for boats. And then I have more ready to share, and then there's jumping off points to go to other ones, and then eventually I'm going to have to leave here and go pick up my buddy from the airport. His flight is delayed. I'm just going to put up a banner. Okay. The Patreon is $2 a month. Yeah. No, I don't need to put that on a banner. Yeah, just tell you guys, Patreon's $2 a month if you want to get on there. I want to do more specific content for that. I need to do that, but you get the episodes uncut early, and you'll get grandfathered in when the price goes up to $5. Once I feel that I have enough content on there, exclusive content, not just early content, but exclusive content to charge $5. But right now we have a bunch of people supporting for $2 a month, and I really, really appreciate that. I appreciate you guys just watching. So, I would appreciate a like and a subscribe if you haven't, but thank you for being here. Thank you for your comments and discussion. I love being over here. Abos and sea travel. Oh, am I allowed to say that? That's like offensive in Australia. I'm not Australian, so I don't care. Okay, so boats. Okay, many coastal ecosystems and a diverse array of human foragers. I'm sorry, I'm going to start here. Anthropological characterizations of marine or aquatic productivity have often been relatively negative. And he's citing some really old sources here. I mean, we know that marine ecosystems can be very, very productive. This is what allows for the Pacific Northwest Native Americans who lived in milled homes. I've talked about them quite a few times. The Haida people, I've done some threads on them. Really, really interesting people. Yeah, Craig says, and you hear a lot of Clevelands. Yeah, you get all the Clevelands that get cut out in the final cut of the episode. And the Pacific Northwest people, with the maritime resources they have, are able to support a relatively large population in a complex society on just maritime, on what is essentially hunter-gatherers and horticulturalists. They don't, as far as I know, they didn't have agriculture, which is fine. It's great to see these different ways that human beings adapt to their environment. You love to see it. I'm sure all of you love to see it if you're watching this channel here, because that's what we're all about. Okay, boats. Not all coastal ecosystems are equally productive or accessible for maritime peoples, of course, and latitudinal variations in coastal productivity around the Pacific Rim are significant. So the farther you go north or south, latitude, it's going to be more or less productive. And there's other factors, obviously. Okay. Recent constructions. Seaworthy boats can access much larger areas of nearshore habitat and transport much larger loads back to residential bases than those traveling on foot. Okay, so what they're saying here is During the summer months, such convoluted coastlines, especially when combined with the low gradient of the Beringian platform, may have offered broad expanses of productive intertidal and nearshore habitats for early maritime people to hunt, forage, and gather. As Ames illustrated, along such convoluted coastlines, there's an incentive here for people to get on boats because they can travel with their catch. They can access places they wouldn't be able to on foot. So we have an incentive structure, which is the first step. I think I'm gonna, unless there's something over here, I'm just gonna look up what a holdfast for a boat is. I think I can kind of, oh God. What is a holdfast? An organ by which, that's not right, attaches itself to, what? Okay, never mind. I don't need to know about organs right now. Okay, so this is good because it's showing Beringia is somewhere in here. This is where the land bridge was. And it's showing, this is the traditional where they find people. Monteverde, 14,500. Okay. Here, this is the one I want to go to. So we're going to read this full text. So this is taken out of a book, which is why it's very fortunate we actually have this. I couldn't find one that's searchable, unfortunately, but what I wanted to show you is a chart that's in this article. And this is from Erlandson as well. In this, when I saw this, I kind of lost my mind. I was like, no freaking way. I had no idea about this. I wish I had seen it sooner. I lost the page. Where is it? Here we go. So this chart, guys, is, oh my God, I lost it again. This chart is This chart is absolutely incredible. Once I find it. Nope, it's lower than that. We're going down. Okay, so check this out. And we're going to look at some of these articles as well. But look at this. So this from this article from Morwood and Sondar, 1998, 1984. They're finding possible evidence for limited seafaring by Homo erectus on the island of Flores, where Homo florensis was found. And this is evidence of limited seafaring by Homo erectus, pre-modern humans, which is very, very interesting. New Guinea. These articles, 3 articles from the 80s and 90s. Oldest sites in Suhal are the earliest evidence for planned maritime voyaging, involving multiple sea crossings, some up to 90 kilometers long. So in New Guinea, they have evidence that people were on these islands. And I've looked at these articles a little bit. That's why I'm saying more stuff than what's just written here, but we're going to look at some of them anyway. 60,000 to 40,000 years ago. 90 kilometers. That's like what, 40 miles? 35, 40 miles? Multiple sea crossings. You can't swim 90 kilometers, okay? They're not swimming over there. They're not Michael Phelpsing it out there. They're not taking the English Channel swim route, okay? They're taking boats. They have to take boats. And because they're finding these sites that are dated to this old, it implies sea travel, even though we don't have the boats. And all of these archaeologists are still convinced. They don't think we need to have the boats. Maybe not. They think that it's possible that they would be controlled, or that I forget what I was saying. 55 miles. Thanks, Craig. Yeah, 55 miles. Should be able to do it. I ran cross country. 3 miles, 3.1 miles is 5 kilometers. And then extrapolate from there. So yeah, it's like you multiply by 140%. But going the other way, it is harder in my brain to go from kilometers to miles. Okay, so Crete in Greece. Homo sapiens sapiens remains with poorly documented context. Calcareous breccia, I don't know what that is, in which bones were cemented, dated by PAU. I don't know what that is. Cam, do you know what PA/U is? To 51,000 plus or minus 12,000 years before present. The colonization of Crete apparently required several short sea crossings. Okay, so that could be 38, 40,000 years at a minimum, based on this dating. Bismarck Archipelago, Melanesia, down by New Guinea again. Shell middens, fishing, and seafaring at several sites dated from 15 to 35 KYR. What is KYR? There's so many terms in here. With voyages up to 140 kilometers long. 140,000 kilometers, 140,000, 140 kilometers, even more. Okay, we're looking at more like 90, 100 miles, I think. You can't see the shore that long, that far away. That's arbitrarily different. Sicily, Italy. Aurignacian assemblage from Mediterranean island, possibly involving a sea crossing 30,000 years ago. Ryukyu Islands, Japan. Human skeletal remains found in Yamashita-cho and other caves on Okinawa and other islands. Involves voyages of 75 to 150 kilometers. 32,000 to 15,000 years ago. No boats have ever been found for any of these. None of them, okay? And it doesn't stop these maritime archaeologists from making these claims. Kozushima Island, Japan. Upper Paleolithic peoples on Honshu Crossing, 50 kilometers wide channel to obtain obsidian. I remember this one. They went and got obsidian. That obsidian from that place was found on the mainland or somewhere else 25 to 20,000 years ago. Melos Island, Greece. Travel across circa 24 kilometers of open water to obtain obsidian for mainland trade 13,000 years ago. This is in the Mediterranean. Admiralty Islands, Melanesia. Settlement of Manus Island required 200-kilometer voyages. I had just shared on Twitter an image of the Manu people in their boats. Very, very cool boats. They look like the ones from Lord of the Rings in the Two Towers, the bad humans. 200-kilometer voyage 12,000 years ago. No boats. Occupation of Ato Kremnos site, Akrotiri Peninsula on southwest coast of Cyprus 10,300 years ago. Channel Islands, California. KYR is a pretentious way of saying 1,000 years. That's obnoxious. What is that like? Just whatever. Boat and marine resource use by coastal Paleo Indian groups on the Channel Islands, California, with sea crossings of at least 10 kilometers. 11,000 to 10,000 years ago. Southeast Alaska and British Columbia. This is where the Pacific Northwest natives. Presence on islands indicates a maritime lifestyle and seafaring capabilities. 10,000 to 900 years, 10,000 to 9,000 years ago. No boats. All of these are examples, some of them stronger than others, of sea travel between 800,000 years ago and 9,000 years ago. All of them prior to when our oldest boat has ever been found. I think the oldest boat that we have is from 10,000 years ago, but it wasn't found underwater. It was found preserved somewhere else. The oldest one from underwater is a canoe from 7,000 years ago. Okay? So we're going to get in, we're going to find, which article did I want to find? I want to find this one. I found it before. Let's see. Okay. Is this seafaring in the Pleistocene? Oh, this is an article published after this one. So there's even more evidence than this. This is what we're going to look at. So we're going to read the abstract first. Seafaring in the Pleistocene. Cambridge Archaeological Journal. Cambridge. This was published in the Cambridge Archaeological Journal. The terrible, untrustworthy University of Cambridge, which has only been around for 800, 1,000 years. Let's look that up. (1209), 800 years. Over 800 years. This is like England's Yale. Okay, Cambridge and the other one. Robert, and from Hebei Normal University. That sounds Chinese. We're going to look that up just to make sure. Hebei Normal University. Public Research University in, oh God. Shijiazhuang. I don't know. Hebei Province, China. Okay, so this is a Chinese university. If Flint doesn't believe it, he's racist. Not really, but that's the logic he uses. Archaeological data from Wallacea, Indonesia, and elsewhere are summarized to show that the history of seafaring begins in the early Pleistocene, and that this human capability eventually led to the Middle Paleolithic ocean crossings in the general region of Australia. To understand better the technological magnitude of these many maritime accomplishments, a series of replicative experiments are described, and the theoretical conditions of these experiments are examined. The proposition is advanced that hominid cognitive and cultural evolution during the Middle and early Pleistocene have been severely misjudged. The navigational feats of Pleistocene seafarers confirm the cultural evidence of sophistication available for the study of paleo art, with comments from Mike Morwood. We've seen this name before. He was on one of the other articles. Ursula Mania. A few of these articles. The seafaring in the Pleistocene. I might not go into this one just because I can't control F it. But I'm going to save this for later. I'm going to save it for later. I got a little notes tab over on the other side. Okay. Initial peopling of the Americas. Okay. Did we already go over this? Cambridge University Press. Michael Collins. Michael Collins. This guy's name is Michael Collins. Do you know who Michael Collins is? He was an IRA guy. I assume this is a different Michael Collins, but holy crap, based. Yeah, this guy's like he was a particularly violent Irish revolutionary. Yeah. When did he die? Did he get killed? 1922? Was the Easter Rising in 1922? No, it was 1916. Whatever. But yeah, this guy's name is Michael Collins. Yeah, we're fans based in Minecraft. You're right, Big Yehuda. Seafaring, initial peoples of the Americas. Okay. Okay, the peopling of Australia and the Americas occurred after fully modern humans had evolved. Most of tropical and temperate Africa, Europe, and Asia were peopled long before Australia, the last of the major Old World regions to be occupied. Was colonized around 50,000 years ago. Between 50,000 and 30,000 years before present, humans with sophisticated cultural equipment were pressing into colder latitudes of northern Eurasia and had developed watercraft capable of nearshore maritime travel. Okay, so that's another reference to 30,000-year-old. Oh, we got Raw McKinney. Are you real Irish or Irish American? I think with a name like that, you're probably real Irish. But yes, yeah, he was. That sucks. 1922. Say a prayer for our Irish heroes who fought for freedom. For 26 of the 32 counties, one day it will be all 32. 26 plus 6 equals 1. Back to the boats. Okay, ocean margins were becoming part of the human niche. Glacial conditions advanced southwards from the Arctic 30,000 to 20,000 years before present, and then retreated by 13,000 years before present, greatly affecting plants, animals, and humans in the northern hemisphere. Arriving at and colonizing the Americas is a significant but not extraordinary chapter in human history, just another step in a long evolutionary journey. Humans were biologically and culturally pre-adapted to vast temperatures and tropical areas of this hemisphere. These were in reach when human technology overcame harsh Arctic and subarctic marine and terrestrial environments and tapped rich circumpolar marine resources of fish, sea mammals, birds, and land mammals. Some species of fish, sea mammals, and birds occur in these northern waters in staggering numbers. These resources would be irresistible challenges to human ingenuity. Colonizers of the Americas were fully adapted to northern latitudes, were equipped with boats, and possessed all of the ingenuity of modern humans. Colonization may have come by way of the Pacific, the Atlantic, or both. So that's a big claim, because the evidence for coming from the coming from the side of the Atlantic is much, much weaker than from the Pacific. I think that it's possible, but we need to see more information for me to actually believe that it's true. So I can't access this one, unfortunately. We're going to pull up another one. We're going to pull up more of this stuff. Where was our little reference sheet here? Keep losing it just from zooming in. Okay. Well, these are all from 1992. Let's find, or sorry, from pre 2000 or so, because that's when that article was written. So let's look up Pleistocene seafaring. Here we go. Maybe we can get to it on this one. Terminal Pleistocene emergence of maritime interaction networks across Wallacea. I think that's around Australia again. The crossing of the Wallacean islands and settlements of Sahul by modern humans over 50,000 years ago represents the earliest successful seafaring of our species anywhere in the world. 50,000 years ago, seafaring. Sue O'Connor. Okay. Archaeology looks like Australia. Australian National University, Canberra, which is the capital of Australia. A lot of Australian archaeological organizations, which I don't know about, as I am an American. The crossing. Archaeological research throughout this vast island archipelago has recovered evidence for varied patterns in island occupation, with accumulating evidence suggesting a significant change in cultural activities and interaction amongst island communities following the LGM, the lower glacial maximum, I think is what that means. New forms of technologies such as shellfish hooks and adzes appear alongside standardized forms of shell beads, indicating that these technological innovations were accompanied by shared styles of personal ornamentation. Simultaneously, obsidian from a single off-island source is found in the archaeological assemblages on at least 4 islands. We explore these implied spheres of interaction across Wallacea with a focus on the terminal Pleistocene / early Holocene, that's basically the Stone Age, cultural materials and customs linking the southern Wallacean islands of Alor, Timor, and Cassar, and other parts of Greater Wallacea and near Oceania. Okay. Let's get into it, chat. I got my cherries. Check my buddy's flight. See how we're doing. My session has expired. Okay. Modern humans embarked on the world's first great maritime journey from the Pleistocene continent of Sunda. That's what I was talking about earlier. The greater Asian mainland. You can see here, make it a little bigger. You can see here, this gray spot is Sunda. Minus 120 meter contour. This is like the lowest sea level. So even if you went farther over here, this is the Malaysian, This is the Malaysian peninsula over here. This is where Sumatra, the largest island in Indonesia, I guess besides Borneo. Sumatra's over here, Singapore, Malaysia. This was all one continent at the lowest. I guess that's the LGM, the lowest glacial maximum. And then over here, this is much deeper water between these places. So while Australia over here, this, you can see this gray spot here, this shows where there was land. All of this white space that isn't gray or dark gray is areas where you would have had to take a boat, even at the lowest sea levels. So that implies sea travel, right? Especially certain of this evidence that we've shown today actually implies that they were out of sight of shore, which is a big deal. That implies a greater cultural understanding of and a greater confidence in seafaring capabilities, a non-arbitrarily different advance in seafaring capabilities and technology. So it implies that these people had not only boats, but probably quite complex boats. These are not simple vessels that were just traveling just offshore. Okay, they're not like rafts. They're more than rafts, or they could have been some rafts. I think there was a guy, who's that guy? Thor something, the Scandinavian dude who demonstrated you could cross a vast area with rafts, but we don't have evidence of it. Okay, so Sunda to Sahul over 50,000 years ago. Where are the boats? And who's going to carry them? Who's going to carry the boats, Flint? In the process, they settled Wallacea, the archipelago of thousands of islands lying between two continental landmasses. Archaeological records show modern humans occupied the larger islands of Wallacea from Sulawesi in the northwest to Flores in Timor in the south and southwest, at least 45,000 years ago. By 35,000 years ago, the small islands of Talud, lying between Mindanao and Sulawesi and Gebe, between Halmahera and New Guinea, had been settled. Okay, so multiple, I don't know what these articles are, but multiple citations of all these people being in these places that they shouldn't have been without boats. Sulawesi here, Flores, Timor. Side note, part of a recent, the last few decades civil war where Christian militias fought with the Indonesian Muslim government as well as Muslim militias. What's up, JC, man? Good to see you. Yeah, all these places. Halmahera, I mean, it's pretty vast. This area on a map, like, look at the scale down here. Look how far apart they're going. It's very, very far. I mean, this was a vast culture. Now, the implication of this is, of course, that they were traveling, they had a complex culture, and they continued to spread out, and they had to use boats. I mean, what are you doing? You got a couple guys stuck on a log, and you just drifted over there 100 kilometers, and then you have this, and then you just keep doing that over and over again, just throwing dudes on logs. Like, what better explanation is there for this? Okay. These maritime migrations must have involved competent seafaring technology and flexible economies, as the new settlers were able to cross strong ocean currents and prevail on islands which had little in the way of terrestrial faunal prey. Their words, not mine. After initial settlement, it appears that these island societies were stable, as there is no evidence for major cultural changes or inter-island material transfers for tens of millennia following initial colonization. However, at the end of the last glacial phase, this changed dramatically. Okay, so changes in environment are going to be followed up with changes in culture. Culture adapts to environments. The physical or the human environment changes. You have changes in your culture. That's just how it happens. Marking the onset of the world's new forms of technology appear throughout the archipelago, and obsidian from a single, as yet unidentified off-island source is found in the archaeological assemblages on at least 4 islands, marking the onset of the world's earliest maritime networks. Coincident with these changes, new highly standardized forms of shell beads appear, indicating that these technological innovations were accompanied by shared styles of personal ornamentation. Yeah. See if there's any images. I like the pictures. Okay. So, terminal Pleistocene obsidian networks in Wallacea. The Southern Wallacean Group 1 network, incorporating the islands of Alur, Atora, Timor, and Kisar. Graph inset from Rietmeyer et al. Photo inset from Maloney. The Philippine Island Network, incorporating the islands of Palawan and Ilan. Photo inset. The dotted line indicates possible extent of these networks. So this is what we're looking at. So they can look in the lab at these archaeological sherds, at these obsidian sherds, and they can identify that they came from one source. They don't know what that source is, but over this large area, they're identifying that they all came from one spot. So that implies trade. Either, one trade network that goes all the way, or these people trade with these people, these people, these people, these people, these people. Usually, like, if there's enough data, if there's like a large enough sample size, they can tell, like, okay, there's this much here as a percentage of other resources, this much here, it's less. Like, there's some cool stuff that they can do with this. And same thing here, shows spreading out of these resources, which implies this large trade network. There's similar stuff going on right now with Mississippian culture in North America, which is unfortunately harder to do because a lot of the Mississippian sites were just plowed over. They were large mounds, and they either didn't know or didn't care that they were that they were Native American artifacts. Many such cases. That's why NAGPRA existed. Yeah, unfortunately, guys, I have to go pick up my friend from the airport. So right when we have a bunch of people in here, I'm sorry, I have to go rewatch the video. This was an interesting one. We'll do this again. People seem interested in this. Let me know. Follow me on Twitter. Patreon's $2 a month. If you'd like to sign up and support the show, donations always welcome, not expected. All you want to do, or like, you know what, if liking the video is supporting it enough. I really appreciate that. I appreciate you guys just being here. I thought this was going to be a Puck Bunnies stream. It can be. Next one will be Puck Bunnies just for you. All right, guys, I will be back with another stream. I've done a daily stream for 3 days, and I want to keep that momentum going. I want to. So I'll see you guys soon. Thanks, Craig. Thanks so much. New episode on Tuesday. Probably Art of Purpose, or a natalist writer, Daniela Pastrak. I've got both those episodes recorded. All right. Later, everybody.